Something I've been wanting to try for a while now is making my very own nest for some of our more established colonies. Also, I have an exciting update on our biggest colony in our collection. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Ant Keeper, where I upload every week about all things ant related. If you find yourself enjoying this video, then subscribe and join the AKColony. Your support really helps me out and I really appreciate it. AAC, Hebel, Aerated Concrete, YTONG. These are the common names for this mysterious looking block. AAC stands for Autoclaved Aerated Concrete. This product is a lightweight concrete building material that's used for structural and insulation related uses in the building industry. It also has been discovered and widely used in other applications. If you've been active in the ant keeping hobby, even for a short while, you likely have seen people shape and modify this regular and ordinary looking concrete block into nests both big and small for colonies around the world. Join me as we build a new nest for our biggest colony. A couple of weeks back, I asked you, AKColony, what should we do with our golden tail sugar ant colony? If you missed that video, I'll leave the link in the description below. I asked you whether we should keep or release this colony of sugar ants. I read through every comment on that video, and some of you had great suggestions and feedback on what the fate will be for this amazing colony. The vast majority of you said we should keep the colony. This colony has exploded in size in the last couple of months, and they are in desperate need for a bigger home for them to store their brood. Here is where the need for a new nest comes in. I consider the different types of nests, however I feel like it's time I tried to make my own YTONG nest. To get started, here is everything I have for this project. First, you need a block of AAC. I bought mine from a hardware store local to my area. If you're from Australia, Bunnings has it for a reasonable price. This monster of a loaf of concrete was about 15 bucks. Also, you'll need a pencil, a pen, and a ruler for marking out the outlines. You'll likely need a saw of some kind. I'm using a handsaw, a piece of vinyl tubing, and some way of etching into the brick, like a hammer and chisel. For this project, you can use either acrylic sheeting or a pane of glass. I prefer glass since it's clearer to see through. Lastly, I'm using magnets to secure the glass to the nest, although you could use screws or glue or some other adhesive. I plan on making a couple of these over time, so I bought myself a Dremel. A Dremel is a handheld power tool that is perfect for engraving and filing out the tunnels and chambers for this nest, although sandpaper would work just as well if you got some of that. To start, mark out your measurements using a pencil and ruler. Place your piece of acrylic or glass on your block. Measure out about 1 centimeter around the perimeter and mark out this outline. The 1 centimeter buffer is there so when you engrave the block later, you don't go too close to the edge, risking cracks or chipping out the corners. Once you have your overall measurement completed, it's time to cut it out. For my piece of AAC, it's double the thickness that I want, so I'm going to cut this block in half and use the offcuts for other nests on another day. Once you have cut away the excess material, you should be left with a smaller block of AAC. Next, mark out another 1 centimeter border, this time on the internal part of your piece of glass or acrylic. This smaller internal box is where the tunnels will be. Now that the prep work is done, we can move on to the fun part, creating the inner workings of the ant nest. Depending on what size the ant nest you're creating is, you may want 1 or 2 entrances or exit holes. This is where the connection will be to the outworld, or a place where you can attach a test tube setup, like for an extra water source. Just remember, ant colonies don't need a lot of space, so don't risk making the living areas too big, otherwise the ants might use the unused space as a dumping ground for dead workers and uneaten food. Rather, consider the size of the species you plan on housing and work around that. Once you have picked your size of vinyl tubing, trace around it on one or both ends of the nest. For this nest, I'm moving a bigger colony with medium-sized ants, so 2 medium-sized vinyl tubing will be perfect. Like when marking out the border, ensure the vinyl tubing placement isn't too close to the edge, otherwise you could damage the side when inserting the tube. Once you've marked out the basics, it's time to get creative and design the interior of the nest. Go crazy! Just make sure to stay inside those borders we marked out earlier. I also have opted to include a small pocket on each side to use as a hydration area, with a small hole on the outside to allow easy access with a syringe. Once carved out, this is where the water source will be located. Also, since I'm using magnets to secure the glass on, I've marked out little dimples where the magnets will sit, whilst the accompanying magnet will sit on the external side of the glass, securing it in place. Okay, so you have everything marked out, let's carve it out. Using a chisel or a flathead screwdriver to carefully chip away the tunnels and chambers. Remember to take it easy, so as to not hurt yourself or risk breaking the ACC block. Take your time, enjoy the process. If you have hydration pockets, now is a good time to carve those out too. Make sure to go in deep enough so you got ample space for the sponge. Also, you can poke a tiny hole through the side to allow access to the hydration pocket. Just make sure it's not too big. You want it just big enough to fit a needle of a syringe. If you have a Dremel, like me, you can use that instead of a hammer and chisel. I'm using a medium-sized cone-shaped bit to etch the material away. Just make sure to always keep the Dremel moving so as to not take too much. Once you are happy with the carving, make a hole where you've marked out the vinyl tubing to go. Since AAC is soft and easy to work with, you can use a screwdriver if you don't have a drill available. Ensure the tubing is a good fit and a smooth, well-rounded hole. I first made a hole that I thought looked pretty close, then tried fitting my vinyl tube as a test. If it was a little too tight, I'd adjust it slightly until it was a perfect fit. Lastly, I etched out little dimples in every corner where the magnets are going to be placed. The next step is completely optional. Do you want to make your nest beautiful or rustic? I decided to try sanding the face of the nest to get rid of my ugly pencil lines I made earlier when marking out. To sand evenly, place the sandpaper down and get a piece of timber or something else that's sturdy and sand away. I'm also using a low grit sandpaper, since to clean up the top doesn't require much work. You could also dress the edges like you might for a piece of timber, rounding it off for a cleaned look. After sanding, it's time to clean off your nest. You can hose it underwater if you want, but it's going to take a while to dry, so I'm using my vacuum cleaner to clean up the leftover debris and dust. The last optional decoration before constructing the nest together is painting. I couldn't find any paint colors I liked when I bought everything I needed for this project, so I'm going to leave it in its natural color for now. All the colors I could find were 50 shades of grey. Make sure if you do paint yours to use non-toxic paint, as regular paint could harm your queen ant or colony. Once dry, we can start to build the nest together. Since I engraved hydration pockets, I'm cutting out small pieces of sponge. This sponge will help hold the water and henceforth improve the overall humidity in the nest. A good square of water on each end with the syringe is all that's needed here. The last stage has finally arrived. Here I'm using a special and expensive non-toxic super glue for the magnets to adhere to the nest. Once dry, I can place the glass piece on top and connect the other side of the magnet, creating a firm and secure hold. Here we have the finished product. A complete AAC nest fitted with hydration pockets for humidity support, tunnels and chambers for the queen to lay her eggs and the workers to reside, and inserts for vinyl tubing to connect up to an OUTWORLD or another test tube full of water. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm pumped to connect AKColony to it. At some point in your life, you have created something, took a step back and thought about how proud you are that you accomplished what you're working towards. Making something with your bare hands is definitely one of those moments. It's a satisfying feeling knowing that I've made this, and even better, knowing our colony is going to truly benefit from it. I hope you too get the chance to make a nest of your own for your ants. Sure, it's easier to buy your own, and you know what? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But making one yourself? even just once, it's pretty neat. If you made it this far, then make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, it really helps me out. Also, have you subscribed and become part of the AKColony? If you haven't, then what are you waiting for? Subscribe and join the ant keeping community and be a part of one of the fastest growing colonies here on YouTube. I'd like to know from you, how do you house your queen ants or colonies? Do you just use test tubes? Or an acrylic setup? Maybe a tubs and tubes setup? Or perhaps something similar like a nest like this? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Until then, ant keepers unite.